Life Reflection, Chapter 12, College. All right, we've finally made it to the last episode regarding school. School was a really, really big part of my life and honestly, probably most people's lives, or at least it took up a lot of time in our lives. And I felt like it was, good to at least cover how I was when I was in school, who I was, what I did, the big events, and, how I remembered it and how I see it. I think everyone has a very, very different experience. And overall, mine's, in my opinion, was pretty good. But I think college was around the time I sort of grew really, really tired of school. So starting off, I actually was excited. I think everyone is kind of excited to get into college. I actually remember we had to take some blood test or some health tests before college started. And I remember this person drawing blood from me because they needed it for whatever reason. And they were asking me about college and stuff. I think this was before I decided to go to Occidental, but maybe it was just a regular health checkup. I don't know what it was, but they were drawing blood for me and I just fainted for the first time, I think, in my life for maybe a few seconds because it's like time skipped for me. It felt like one moment I was fine and then the next moment my head was down and my mom was coming towards me. So judging from the distance where she was standing based on where she was when she was coming towards me, it was only for a few seconds that I fainted, but it was an interesting time skip, I would say. Anyways, that was just a weird memory that happened right before college started, sometime around there. Or at least it happened before college in general, and it was in senior year of high school, probably. Anyways, so I went to Occidental College, and it was a pretty small school overall. It is a small school, and it's pretty nice. It's a private college. Tuition's kind of a crazy amount, but luckily I got financial aid and stuff like that. So, and scholarships and grants. So it made the price much more manageable, pretty much close to what a UC was, I believe. So private schools, private colleges, I guess, the only difference is that it's smaller and I guess there's more community connection stuff that personally I did not really tap into. That was one thing I feel like I regret. I should have tried to do more of that. But again, I was sort of here just to primarily do the 3-2 program, which was to get into Caltech. But we'll talk more about that as we go on. So we started off with physics, and the plan was eventually, do 3 years of physics to get into Caltech with basically electrical engineering or something related to that, because I was very interested in science and math was sort of something that came easy to me. It was the same in college, actually, taking the more advanced classes like multivariable, discrete mathematics, and complex analysis. That was an interesting class that used imaginary numbers for the whole theory, which was very, very interesting. But overall, I really enjoyed learning, I'd say. Learning new stuff, especially from physics and math, and even from my other classes. I thought learning in general was more fun than it used to be, but it was still kind of learning through myself, because most of the time what happened was I ended up just falling asleep in class. So it wasn't full sleeping, it was just nodding off and sort of occasionally putting my head down and closing my eyes. So it appeared like I was sleeping, but I was still somewhat awake, just not fully awake. So half sleeping, I guess. But I basically did that in every single one of my classes, except for the ones where I was forced to interact, or the days where I was forced to interact. And I remember a teacher coming up to me and asking me if I was okay. And I was just yeah, I'm just when it gets cold, because the class had really good AC, I told him I just get a little sleepy and stuff. But yeah, I definitely had at least one or two professors mention they noticed me dozing off in class a lot. But I got good grades overall. So they didn't really care too much as long as I kept up in class and participated when it was time to participate. So yeah, the way I learned was just doing the homework, asking friends for, what happened in class, or sometimes I would ask to see their notes or something, or I would just read the textbook or the book that was given. And that is how I learned throughout all of college, throughout all of physics. I did not actually learn from my professors or teachers very much at all. And that is my fault because I just got into that habit. I guess I'm just someone who's not very good at sitting in a lecture and paying attention, and like it's just too boring for me. There's not enough interaction. I just get really tired. I remember skipping class very, very often. Like I think in my third year, which was my final year, for advanced electromagnetism, that class, I just could not pay attention like at all. Like at least for other classes, there was a good like 5 to 10 minutes where I could like somewhat pay attention. But for that one, I immediately dozed off. So I was like, there's no point in me being here. It's also really early in the morning. So what I did instead was during that time, I would just run. I would just like exercise, like go to the track field and just exercise or dance or something. And I did not feel bad about skipping class whatsoever because he made class participation 0% of the class and homework 0%. So it was basically just tests were, basically tests were 50%. And then the final exam was 50%. That's how that crazy ass class was structured. And I ended up getting, I believe, a B in that class, but I was totally fine with that. Like the fact that I hardly attended class and never did the homework and I got a B, like that's totally fine. I think memories that I really enjoyed were like hanging out with my roommates. My first year roommates, I didn't get close with them, but there was like a club called Dance Production. Dance Pro is what we would call it. And I participated in my first year. I became a choreographer in my second year, had to audition, managed to get it. And then third year, re-audition, managed to get it again. And this time I did it with a friend, which was much, much better because it was fun to collaborate. I really love the collaborative spirit. But anyways, the reason or how I got close with my second and third year roommates were because we all were in that dance production club. And all three of us were physics majors. So it made it pretty easy to like study together and just like, it was like a no-brainer to room together. And whenever we would study after the tests, or right before the test, not the after, and sometimes after as well, but before, the night before the test, I don't know why we did this all the time. We had this tradition of just like playing Yu-Gi-Oh! With each other. And it was like a free-for-all type of battle. So it was kind of funny. Sometimes like most of my strategy was just like, okay, play it safe, let my two roommates like battle it out, and then just like whoever won that battle, I will fight them. And I think with that strategy, I would win the majority of the time. but I think it was mostly like just them trying to beat each other. And I was just like the weakest deck. So like nobody cared to like bother fighting me until the end. Until I got like this Blue Eyes White Dragon deck that was really, really cool at the time. Had like synchro monsters and stuff. I'm out of touch with Yu-Gi-Oh now. I used to love it when I was a kid. I will have a whole chapter dedicated to the entertainment I watched and loved, because that's a big part of my life, I feel. But anyways, it was a weird tradition. We would sleep later because of it, and oftentimes when we studied until like at least until 1 a.m. Oftentimes I feel like we would sleep at 2 to 3, and then our exam was at like 9 or something like that. And yeah, those times were fun. Even though it was stupid, it was fun. And we all still managed to get good grades, and both of them continued in the path of like physics and engineering on that and all that stuff. So they're both aerospace engineers, and that's really, really cool, And I still keep in contact with them, not as much for one of them, but he's still a great friend, and I'm sure once we catch up again soon, it will be a great time. I visited him in Hawaii in like 2019 or something like that, and that was a really, really good experience. But I would say for classes, the professors were all pretty nice. They were all like good professors. There was one that was a really, really good professor. I remember he was the one who taught math. It was like math specifically for physics, math methods or something like that. But it very like advanced math techniques that were very, very interesting. I really enjoyed that class. And one of the other professors would always like comment and say like, hardly any physics here. But it was a Really, really cool class. And the professor was very, very animated. I remember if there was one class that where I paid attention the most, it was that class. I would probably go for about 20 minutes before starting to fade. So that was a good class. There was also discrete mathematics. That professor actually hardly ever showed up in class. And I remember really enjoying the class because it was sort of like a free class where the assignments were pre-assigned and you would just do it and learn on your own. And the tests were very simple overall. Discrete mathematics is just like a pure form of math. So it honestly was like one of the easiest classes ever. But I remember there was like a couple of students who like try to gather up like a petition and be like, the professor never showed up. So like, I feel like, or they felt like they didn't get a good learning experience, which is honestly totally fair. And they were trying to use that petition to be like, you can't fail people or like give them low grades in a class where the professor like didn't teach. So yeah, totally fair. Interesting experience overall. Some notable stuff from college was that the computer science was very new when I was around. It like barely started up for that college. And I was one of I forgot what they call it, but it was a job and I was getting paid for it. But people could just go to me at a certain hour and I would just like help them with stuff. It was like tutor hours or something like that, specifically for computer science. So I had that job as well as another job where it was for physics. This was during my third year. It was like physics workshops or something like that. I would host them with another physics major who was a year older than me. And yeah, people would just like come in if they needed physics help. And I was supposed to like check out what was going on during the class so I could create like worksheets for people to work on and help them out with their class. But I hardly ever did that. Sometimes I would just go in for like a few minutes and like get out, because I told them like basically there were like conflicting classes because I graduated in 3 years. So I had no choice but to like stuff my time with classes. And due to that, I wasn't able to actually check out the class. So sometimes I'd just go in really, really quickly for like 5 minutes or something like that, and then go to my next class. So it was definitely a lot of studying, a lot of homework, a lot of just doing things on my own and learning on my own. But I still found it like a really good challenge and like pretty fun. Most of my decision to graduate early came from after the first year. Like after the first year ended, I was just like, this is pretty difficult overall. It was like way harder compared to high school, that's for sure. But for some odd reason, I was just like, I really don't like this. I really don't like sleeping in class all the time. So I'm just gonna like graduate early and try to do my own thing. Graduate early, take a gap year, try to do my own thing, and then get back to maybe like a master's program after that. That was my plan. And I was like, okay, so how can I do that? Like I had counseling. They told me I could use my AP credits. I figured out like all the classes I needed to take, structured it all out. And I was like, we got this. We can do this. We can actually graduate in 3 years with like no issues. We just have to like take a lot of classes for a certain, for second and third year. So that's what we did. And the plan like all worked out somehow. It was definitely really difficult though. Like I'd say after I graduated, I was pretty proud that I was able to do it, because there was a lot of things that I had to do in order, a lot of classes, a lot of homework, a lot of everything that I needed to do and focus on in order to accomplish it in time. There was only like one other person that did it from like the year up. And I managed to do it while getting cum laude, so that's like above 3.5 GPA. There's nothing above a 4.0 GPA for college, unlike high school. I think high school, if you take an AP class, it counts as like a grade up. And that's why I had like some weird number, like a 4.4 or whatever in high school, which was very strange. But either way, I was definitely very, very happy that I managed to do it. There was also like one difficult sort of thing that was somewhat in the way. It was like college comps, I suppose, or physics comps is like just like a series of tests, like 5 different tests covering like the different categories in physics, like involving like modern physics, which has like some quantum stuff, and then some optics, some mechanics, thermal, electromagnetism, stuff like that. and just like a series of multiple choice questions. And for the first one, we somehow passed everything except for one. And you have like multiple takes for this. I think it was like 3 or something, 3 chances to do all the tests. And I managed to pass all 4 or 4 out of 5 of them the first try, which was very, very good. I think a lot of people have a tendency to pass 3 out of the 5, and then they focus on 3 out of 5, and then they do like 2 out of 5 like later. So I was very, very glad that I could do that. I remember my roommate being very, very impressed. So that made me happy. But yeah, there was also like a lot of other stuff that I was not very good at, honestly, because of the lack of paying attention in class. Sometimes it's like easy to let certain things slip, and easy to like not understand certain things that are going to be on the test because you just didn't pay enough attention in class, and you like study the wrong things, or you spend a lot of time studying everything versus like, oh, in class he gave you hints to what he was going to put on the test. So that made things significantly harder sometimes, for sure, depending on like the class structure and everything. Lots and lots of studying, and lots of work, honestly. But somehow I remember like every summer I always felt like refreshed, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready for the new year, like very excited. And then we started again, and it was extremely taxing and tiring and difficult, and I wanted to basically quit school or like just end it as soon as possible. So it was a very interesting, like it was sort of interesting how that works for me. I guess in a way there's a similarity between that and also all the things that I'm doing now. I feel like I have a tendency to do a lot of things at once, and the stress of it and the challenge of it sort of makes me feel kind of good, but at the same time I'm just like, oh, like I remember when I was running all the time in my head, I was thinking, we got to keep going, we got to keep running, we got to make it, because I was trying my best to like increase my mile time. I think at the end I got around like a 7-minute, like 30-second mile, which is not that great, honestly. But for me, I had asthma as a kid. I had like some wheezing issues. So whenever I ran, I didn't have stamina. I could run fast, but I didn't have stamina. So that's why I was like, yeah, I'm a fast runner. And when I was in elementary school, that's what I thought. But I can't last for very long. So in high school, like I remember there was like a PE test, and there was a bet amongst friends, like who would finish first and stuff. And then for the mile, and then people were betting on us. I wasn't betting on myself. And then I sprinted in the beginning, trying to keep up with my friend who's like a football player. And then he just kept going the whole way and got like, I don't know, like a 6-minute mile or something like that. And then for me, I got like a 10-minute mile because I just stopped. I was like, oh, I can't keep going. So yeah, definitely weak stamina when I was in high school and college. And I was working on it in my 3rd year. And I managed to get up to a 7-minute, 30-second mile, something around there. I think it might have been closer to like 8 minutes, but I remember 7 minutes and 53 seconds as like something I achieved at some point. So hopefully I'm not misremembering. I can probably access my journal because college is also when I started journaling. 2014 of March is when I started my journal, and it was basically just me writing about the best moment of the day. I just thought like college was really fun. The first year was really fun, and I was just like, okay, let's write about every day, or at least like just a couple little blurbs about the best moment of the day. I was a very positive person, I'd say, and I still am a pretty positive person. So that pretty much kept going on like forever until today, and it's definitely changed like the way I do it and what's in it, as well as the way I write it and how well written it is. All of that has changed, but overall the spirit is pretty similar. I mean, these days I'd say I do more like documenting, like just keeping track of my history rather than talking about too much feelings, just because I have this, right? I have a podcast where it's basically an audio journal, honestly. So for relationship stuff, for friendships and relationships, I dated a girl in freshman year, and it was kind of quick. So she doesn't really consider it a relationship. So I guess it was just us dating. So it lasted about, I think, 3 months total. And it was kind of an interesting one. Well, before that, I did have interest in a different girl, And I did ask her, but I ended up getting rejected. I'd say that was like one of the first times I got rejected. And it was definitely a very, very sad feeling, but I think I would eventually sort of understand the feeling more and more, to the point where now in the present, I'm like, I'm not afraid of rejection. And a part of me doesn't always expect yes and stuff like that. But it was interesting because my friend, I did hear the gossip, and my friend was like, oh, if you just waited longer, like she was telling me that she was coming around and she was willing to give you a chance and all that stuff. But for me, after I got rejected, I just moved on. And like soon after, I got my first girlfriend in college. And it was a good experience overall. We were good friends. And I think if we had remained friends, it would have been a really, really good friendship because we like the same things. We like the same music. We like DC comic stuff. There was a lot of stuff that we had in common and could. So it was fun talking to her. And eventually we just got close. We hung out more and more and got close. And there was a moment where we were just watching a show, and oftentimes she would say her hand is cold, and I would like basically warm up her hand with my hands, and it would eventually turn into hand holding, and it was nice. And I liked her, but I feel like I didn't like her enough, and I wasn't a good boyfriend to her. I definitely feel like I was a very, very in my own head type of guy back then, I would say. I still kind of am a little bit in my own head a lot. And what I mean by that is like I'm very focused on what I'm doing, and like I didn't give her enough attention, and I didn't like show her enough like care and love and the things that you're supposed to do in a relationship. So there were times that we would fight, and there were times where I just did not do the right thing as a boyfriend, and eventually we just broke up because of it. There was like a fight right before we broke up, and yeah, I will like just fully admit that I was not a good boyfriend for sure. And we tried being friends afterwards. There was like a small period of time where we were friends, but eventually the more we talked, the more she just didn't like what I said, because what I said was probably insensitive to her, especially being someone, as we were technically dating. Again, she doesn't really call it a relationship, but technically we did call it a relationship while we were in it. Like I did officially ask her out kind of like near her birthday. And yeah, so there were some fun times, and I enjoyed being with her for sure. But overall, like it was short. And after a while, I got back with the high school girlfriend, and yeah, that was probably not the best thing, honestly, because around that time we were doing not long distance. We were both still in California, but it was easy enough to access each other, but it was still sort of like, I just remember a conversation. Like she was going to study abroad, and for like a few months, and I was like, and she broke up with me because she thought like I would end up cheating on her for whatever reason. And like she thought like, okay, maybe there's going to be some other girl that likes me or something. So she just doesn't trust me, which is interesting considering, we were together for so long in high school. But that's what happened. And then when she came back, by the time she came back, there was nothing, there was nothing between me and any other girl. And by the time she came back, like we were somewhat together, somewhat not. It was like a blurred line. And then I told her, I don't want this undefined thing. And so we got back together for a little bit, and it just didn't really work out. There was too many, I think we were just kind of incompatible in a lot of ways, no matter how many times we tried to make it work. So that's how it sort of ended, and we just tried our best to be friends from there. But when she eventually got a new boyfriend, she said like, she has to basically end it right there, like the friendship, or end the communication. Like again, she said that she would love me forever and care about me forever. I feel the same about her, and we ended on good terms for the most part, even though I cried. But that's how it went, and I believe it was a good thing, honestly. So that was after college finished, like right the year after college finished is when that friendship ended. But that was mostly it for relationship stuff in college. There was one girl, the one girl from middle school that gave me a card when I moved, that liked me. I felt like I got to see her again at a certain point because I visited her school and caught up with her and everything. And I felt like I sort of like had feelings for her again. So I did kind of tell her at some point, and she told me, at this point she doesn't feel the same. So that was like another rejection. And we were still able to be friends after that. But there was this weird event like after school finished where like I ended up seeing her at like a different place. I think it was around like Oakland, and she invited me to like a club or a bar, and I didn't even know it was a bar because like it had cafe in its name. And I was like, okay, we're just going to a cafe. So I just went in like normal clothing and all that stuff because I went to a breakdance competition to watch my friends. I wasn't competing. But after that, I went to that club or whatever. And then during that club, like she was really, really close to me, like physically. Like she danced with me and like held my hand and stuff like that. So it was a very, very interesting experience for sure. But I kind of just wanted to ask her like, what was going on and stuff. But after that moment, we haven't really talked normally. So that's unfortunate. I feel like that was just like a weird thing that happened, and I'm like willing to overlook it and forget about it for the sake of friendship because we've been friends for so long and stuff. But I don't know. I don't know what that was. I mean, if I were to guess, it was because at the time she like recently broke up with her boyfriend and she was just using me as like a rebound basically. And yeah, but I was just more so wanting to talk and wanting to catch up. Weird things have happened in my life. I mean, that's not that weird, but like, yeah, I've experienced some stuff that I found weird, and that was one of them. Anyways, I think that's enough about my love life. I don't really, it's not something I feel was a huge part of my college life, I'd say. But it was a part of my college life for sure, because I do feel like those events were significant to me back then. They didn't really play a huge role on who I am now, though, but they were definitely significant back then. But yeah, overall, I had a lot of fun in college. I wish I met more people. I wish I wasn't always studying and doing homework and assignments and stuff. I danced a lot, though. That was fun. I met a lot of breakdancers because I started like I think we called it the All Styles Club. It was supposed to be like a breakdance club where we could dance together and stuff. And we had like, I managed to get B-Boy Ivan to host a workshop there. Like he's like a pretty like legendary B-Boy overall. Was doing so many head spins and crazy power moves after the workshop. And it was a fun experience getting to set that up, talk to him and all that stuff. And starting the club too was also a good experience, even though there weren't too many people who are interested in breakdance at the school. But I'm glad that I was able to at least start something. But I would say some of my favorite memories are definitely from like dance pro and dance production. I think we can probably get into that like in the next episode, because I do feel like dance is a big, big topic, and I want to sort of talk about it in its own chapter. For now, I will say college me was overall just somebody who enjoyed the challenge, enjoyed the academics, wasn't able to pay attention in class, made friends and stuff. My friends thought of me as a very, very bright person, as someone who's very social. And they actually credit me for being the one who like formed the group and got people together, which I personally do not want to take credit for, because I feel like it's everyone's decision to actually have like hung out together and do things together and stuff. And I went home a lot on the weekends as well, so I didn't get quite as close as I could have had I stayed. I feel like that was another regret of mine. I feel like I should have tried my best to stay on campus during the weekends, because that's when people hung out and did things that were more interesting. But I sort of was close enough to home to be able to just visit on the weekends very often. So yeah, that was another thing about college for me that I regretted. But I still made good friends and that I still talk to these days. Like I saw a lot of them last year for a wedding, and I still see some of them like very often, like mainly 2 or 3 of them. So for me, like going to that college and having made those connections in terms of friendships and stuff, like I'm very, very happy about that. For me, when I say connections, by the way, I don't mean like networking and all that stuff. I mean like just being friends, just being people who are connected to each other by like care, by love, by just memories and things that you've done together. Not that networking is like terrible or bad or anything, but I just, for me personally, I don't like the idea of just forming a connection for the sake of like benefiting yourself, if that makes sense. But I do feel like college was a transitional period for me in terms of my personality and the way I socially interacted with people. I did definitely get better at social interaction and just like overall how I saw and met friends and all that stuff. Like, I feel like it was definitely a really, really good social playground for me. And so, I mean, like if my friends saw me that way, that like the majority of them saw me that way, then that is a good sign that like I made a good change from high school. Like, because in high school, I was definitely quieter. I was definitely more reserved. Towards the end, I definitely feel like I was starting to get there in terms of, you know, how sociable I can be. But I don't think until it was like after college finished, actually, that I feel like I became who I am now in terms of my ability to socialize. And even Japan being there for a while, my 130-day adventure there really, really let me like stretch that muscle of just like meeting people, talking to people and everything like that. It's just such a great thing in life to be able to meet people, connect with people, and just form new memories with people. Like that to me is one of the greatest things, like hobbies, I guess, just experiences you can have. And college was, you know, played a big role in me getting to where I am now. But I would say like who I am now dwarfs who I am in college. Like I feel like I am so much more capable and so much more able to socialize in a way that I would prefer. Like just the way I deliver my lines, not like I'm reading off of a script, but the way I talk, the way I am with others, the way I'm careful with, you know, being like whenever I know that someone's sensitive about something, or whenever I feel like someone prefers to talk about a certain topic, or they light up when they talk about a certain topic. There's a whole thing involving like talking and really getting the best out of someone, right? Not for the sake of yourself, but for the sake of overall just connecting and the whole experience, I feel. But anyways, before I go on another tangent, yeah, that was definitely, those were fun times. A part of me feels like had I stayed an extra year, like I could have formed a whole other set of memories with my friends and grew closer to them, and perhaps have met new friends and done things a little bit differently. I actually have a lot of dreams about, or used to have a lot of dreams about like doing a fourth year. I don't know why. I always dreamt about like being in school and being like, okay, wait a second. I graduated. I'm just going to get out of this classroom right now. And then I just fly away. Usually it becomes a lucid dream. But yeah, that was another thing I always thought about. It's like, what if I stayed another year? Just because it was a good experience overall. But that's pretty much it in terms of school. There was a lot of adventures in school for sure. I'm not highlighting and covering all of it, but yeah, the dance pro stuff, we'll talk about that soon.